Welcome back. We're now joined by our longtime friend and colleague, Ryan Haygood, President and CEO, New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. Ryan, you joined us on our Uncut series. We covered a lot of ground. We have more ground to cover. Let me ask you, we were talking about police, defunding the police, taking some of those dollars, using it in other places. You know, and I know that there are many who are not part of this movement, who don't care very much about racial and social justice, at least don't appear to, and say, let's just say the president, I don't know what he's thinking and feeling, but he's like, look at those liberals. They're leftists. They want to do away with the police. Don't you think on some level, Ryan Haygood, that that kind of language of potentially doing away with the police, whether it's aspirational, a word you used last time, or not, gives some credence to those with another point of view that frankly doesn't help things?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think it's first important for people to understand what that push is all about, right? So I think part of it is...
Is it a dog whistle?
It's not a dog whistle in the sense that it really is at its bottom about how you actually empower communities. So
no, when Donald Trump says you see what they are doing, and then he says we need to dominate the streets, it's all about law and order. Right. They want to do all, you, me, right, some others who are involved in protests, they want to do away with the police. Right. Is that a dog whistle? Well, and who is it a dog whistle to whom?
That's absolutely a dog whistle. It's a dog whistle intended to double down on the very police practices that brought us to this moment. And
dare I say Bull Connor?
In this moment, to that point, I think we're required to do something very different than we've done. You know, you and I talked previously about how I came of age in the early 1990s, and on March 3rd, 1991, we saw Rodney King brutalized in California on video. And we couldn't imagine that 30 years later, we'd be having this very conversation about how police brutality has persisted over the years. And so I think what this moment calls for, there's a lot of talk about what does it mean to defund police. Part of what I think folks should understand is that that's a broad aspirational strategy to think about how you make different kinds of investments in communities. So if you invest very deeply in policing, as many of our cities do, the country spends more than $115 billion every year in law enforcement. If you make deep investments in policing, you will make deep investments in incarcerating people. If you make deep investments in empowering communities on front-end services that empower schools, libraries, parks, right, community-based programming, you will empower communities in a way that you need, at a minimum, fewer police, fewer interactions with police, and you'll be dispatching police in the most serious cases. Right now, Steve, we dispatch police for all manner of things that have nothing to do with police functions.
Let me twist this around a little bit. Let me change a little bit. There was an author, I believe, at Princeton University who was on the Today Show as we're doing this program on the 18th of June. It'll be seen later. She wrote a great essay in The Atlantic, and I'm drawing a blank on her name. And she said, Black people do not want pity from white people. Mm-hmm. We want people to understand. We want people to be compassionate and empathetic and care about making change, but not pity. Mm-hmm. What does that mean to you?
I love that point. I mean, I think what we want in white folks, we want allies. You know, very often when I appreciate this conversation, Steve, because very often when we have conversations specific to Black people, white folks tune out. And so that's a Black person's issue. Black folks will champion.
It's not our issue.
It doesn't relate to us, right? I don't fully understand the Black Lives Matter piece. I mean, yes, I get it in principle, but what does that really mean? And here's what Black Lives Matter really means. That we get allies, white allies, who previously maybe have been standing on the sideline to join with us in championing real reforms, real policies, real changes that actually make deep investments in Black communities. So there's been no social movement in this country that has advanced powerfully without a multiracial coalition. So right now, I think what this moment requires, look, Black folks have always championed Black causes, right? We've been at the forefront of those and will continue to be. But what we haven't always enjoyed is allyship from white folks who can go to circles that we can't go to. I want to say this to you, Steve. 2 weeks ago, I joined a Zoom call where I was talking to a funder, a white woman. At the top of the conversation, Steve, she says to me, and I could tell she had been crying before our call. She says, Ryan, I want to start by saying this to you. I can't imagine how difficult it must be to be a Black man in America right now. I've been alive 45 years, Steve. I've been Black the whole time. I've interacted with a lot of folks. I've never had an interaction like that. And what that said to me, and I took that to be very sincere, she was genuine, was that we're getting to a place where white people are starting to understand the difficulty of being Black in this country. It's a beautiful thing. I don't want folks to mistake makes a mistake when I'm saying. It's a beautiful thing to be Black, but it's also very difficult. We've seen that play out on TVs more recently, but certainly over the last several years. So part of what this law requires is for white folks to join in struggles to champion specific causes that empower Black people, principally, and of course have benefits to everybody. But the harm visited upon Black people is very specific and requires allyship from white folks who advance changes around those issues. On
that note, Ryan, the other thing that we need to do is, I mentioned when we did our Uncut segment, that you and I, together with Micheline Davis and Raz Baraka, the mayor of Newark, and also the police director, public safety director, Anthony Ambrose in Newark, and so many others, we gathered together at a forum in Newark to deal with police minority relations. We have to figure out how we're going to have a forum like that. Mm-hmm. Looks like it's going to be on Zoom. We will not be in the same room, mm-hmm. but we have to have that conversation again. But anyone who says we already covered race, we already covered racism, and check off the box, I'm not going to get on a soapbox, but that's what confronting racism is. It's saying it is not a segment, it's not a show, it's not a one-off. You don't check off the box. It's an ongoing commitment. There is so much work to do. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to every conversation we have. All the best, Ryan.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for having me.
We'll be right back right after this.
State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation. Funding has been provided by Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, TD Bank, Englewood Health, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, the Fidelco Group, Summit City MD, United Airlines, and by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. Promotional support provided by Jaffe Communications and by New Jersey Globe.